This is going to be the first in a series of different notes problems. So here's the first installment in the series. You can see the problem that we are dealing with here is we're dealing with a $100,000 note that we have issued. It's a 4-year installment note. We will have to make annual payments on the note, and we will have an 8% market and face rate of interest. So the first thing we need to do is we need to use actually our little time value calculator over here in order to figure out the amount of the payments we must make each period. So let's put in the information we know. We know it's an 8% rate. We know that we are going to make 4 payments, so the number of periods before. We know the present value is $100,000. We know the future value is eventually going to be 0, and so we need to calculate the payment. So there's our rate, there's our periods. Once we have PV, we don't really need anything else. We'll close it off and be done. And you can see we are making $30,192.08 payments. Now over on the right side here, we're going to fill out our table. We know the carrying value at the beginning of our note is the same as the amount that we are issuing the note for, so it's actually the same $100,000. Now while I'm going through the installment note table over here on the right hand side, please don't just try to memorize the formulas, recognize the thoughts that are going on and what we are doing with each and every one. Okay, so that's our $100,000, and every single year we are going to make a payment on that, and you can see our payment is, as we calculated over here, the $30,000 and some change there. So the interest expense, the first year, what's going to be our interest expense? Well, you guys know how to calculate interest. I equals PRT. So we've got equal sign, just to, again, equals PRT. Here's our P. We owe $100,000. We're going to multiply by the 8% rate, and I could have gone and clicked it if I wanted to. And technically, this is 12 over 12. This is a full year, so we can actually just be done with it. At that point, we can see our interest expense in the first year is $8,000. That's telling me of my first payment here of $30,192. $8,000 is principal, and the $8,000 is interest, and the remaining $22,192 is principal. At the end of the year, after that first payment, we are going to owe that $100,000 minus the change in principal. Now we're down to $77,000 in carrying value on our note. Again, next year we're making the exact same payment. Go. And the interest expense, the calculation, again, we're taking how much we owe, so our carrying value, times the 8%. And again, we can see our principal calculation is the same. Take that 30 minus the interest expense, carrying value calculation, same thing. Take our prior carrying value, subtract the principal we just paid, and now we're down to owing $53,000. Again, same steps. Calculating our interest expense equals the amount that we owed at the end of last year times our 8%, and our principal, again, we'll go ahead and knock off by a little bit more every single payment. Carrying values again decreasing, and you can see now we're at $27,955 and 63. We make our last payment, and you're like, well, wait, that's more than $27,955. I agree. That difference is right here, all in the interest. That times our 8%. Our principal is again going to be, maybe you can guess it, yes, $27,955 and 63. So our carrying value at the end, absolutely nothing. Now let's think back a little bit, and throughout this note we can think of the issuance and the adjusting entry and the payment, what journal entries are involved. When you issue the note, it's pretty simple. Our cash is going up, so we're going to debit our cash. And we are receiving $100,000, and we will credit our notes payable as well for $100,000. On 12/31, we're going to make an adjusting entry. 12/31, let's go ahead and mark this 12/31/16. On 12/31/16, we're going to make an adjusting entry because we have some interest that has accrued at this point. So we've got interest expense, and the other account that's involved is interest payable. We learned this back when we did all the adjusting entries. But don't forget, now we got to remember how to calculate this one. So I'll show that calculation here. At 12/31/16, our principal is still $100,000. Our rate is still the 8%. But then think from April to December, how many months have happened? What's the time? And April through December is 9 months out of the year, so 9 divided by 12. And we see that our adjustment here needs to be for $6,000. So $6,000 of our interest is accrued in the year 2016. When we finally make the payment on April 1st, 2016, we're going to have to debit out that interest payable. For that $6,000, we no longer owe it, we're actually paying it. We need to debit the interest expense for the additional interest expense that we have. You can see we had the $6,000 entry back on 12/31/16. We get to 4/1/17, and there was $2,000 more interest involved in that first year. We're going to go ahead and also debit our notes payable for the change in principal value, the $22,192 and good old 8 cents. Excuse me, let me make that just a slight bit larger. And then the account that we will credit. Hopefully you all know the account that we are going to credit here is cash for the amount of our payment. Sorry for the fun little issues there with Excel and designing. Of $30,192 and 8 cents. Debits equal credits, we're all good. Hopefully we understand what we are doing.